Ladies and gentlemen, African Caribbean churches in the United Kingdom, in collaboration with the University of the West Indies, are pleased to present History, Heritage and Identity, an Education for Transformation Symposium series. Today's conversation, balancing the scales for economic justice and wealth creation.
Good day, everyone, and congratulations to the team in Jamaica and the UK for organizing this very important event. I'm pleased to be here with you and to bring some words on behalf of the Centre for the Study of the Legacies of British Slavery at UCL, University College London, on the work we're doing and how it fits within some of the bigger questions of reparative justice, but also how Jamaican youth must understand their history as part of their empowerment in the contemporary period. I would like to introduce to you the work of the Centre. First, who we are. The Centre grew out of a 2009 project started at UCL by a group of historians led by Professor Catherine Hall. The purpose of the work then, in its initial phase, was to understand how race became an embedded concept in contemporary UK society. The answer to this question naturally led them to the study of British slavery. They asked a simple question: why was it that British history and society for so long failing to recognize its participation in racial slavery, telling instead a story of abolition, the famous Wilberforce story of how Britain led the global anti-slavery movement? There was a connected question to this one. How did this national story obscure the way racism had become institutionalized in Britain today? Students of slavery and race in the English-speaking Caribbean may find the question fairly rhetorical. Ever since Eric Williams opened up the entire field of Caribbean history with his book Capitalism and Slavery in 1944, we have understood slavery was indeed far more vital to the building of modern Britain in its wealth and in its prejudices than the national story of abolition indicates. What the UCL team set out to do was to prove this. To do so, they looked at the records of the compensation payments made to slave owners at emancipation in the 1830s. At that time, people connected to slavery in objection to the Parliament's intention to abolish the oppressive institution petitioned and won reparations for their loss of property, which meant human beings that they owned. The sum was an enormous £20 million in 1838, which is an extraordinary amount today in the 21st century. These records had been used for generations by historians, but never systematically analyzed or presented to the public. Out of this came the Legacies of British Slave Ownership project. This project has resulted in television and radio documentaries on slavery, books, dissertations, workshops, genealogical research, and conferences. But by far, the greatest output has been the LBS database. That database is free and available on our website, which is in the link below. The site today contains over 60,000 names of planters, slave owners, business people, royalty, and other British people who received some amount of the money paid in compensation. The project was able to follow where the money went, how it was reinvested, and most of all, how it materially contributed to industrial Britain. And this was not only in the area of finance. It was also in the purchase of country homes, art, museum collections, and so on. The reality long suspected by Eric Williams and taught in Caribbean history classes was now clearly evident with a great deal of empirical proof. Slavery may not have been the most important contributor to Britain's industrial revolution, but it was a significant one. If we consider the enterprise of the transatlantic slave trade, of which Britain was a major part, and the vast sums made over 200 years in plantation slavery, it is inarguable that Britain's participation in centuries of racial oppression of African captives was fundamental to its empire building at home and abroad. There are a lot of implications from this work. It forces British history, more broadly, to accept and inscribe its participation in global slavery into the story of the British nation. It also provides tangible proof of how slavery as a business operated in practice. We're able to join the dots between, for example, the wealthy Beckford family that owned estates in Clarendon, St. Elizabeth, and Westmoreland, with the Lord Mayor of London, William Beckford, whose statue stands today in Guildhall in London. This is not guesswork. The compensation records on our website details not only the amount of money the Beckford family received, but also the total number of captive Africans they possessed. The impact of this work is most powerfully felt in the public sphere, which is how it should be. The database, in addition to generations of incredible scholarship by historians of Caribbean slavery and its legacies, legitimate the claims being made for reparative justice. This includes new histories to be written. A fundamental and too often overlooked part of reparative work is that we first need to repair the history writing. It also includes claims for statues to be taken down, and many of the campaigns that have been launched even before 2020 to take down statues in London that honor traders in the transatlantic slave trade and owners of people have relied heavily on the work of the LBS database. And of course, it includes work on financial reparations to descendants of the enslaved. And again here, the evidence provided by the LBS database is crucial. This is ongoing and important work, but for us, it is not where we see our work remaining. As historians committed passionately to knowledge of the past being essential for contemporary empowerment, we regard the story of slave ownership and compensation as critical but incomplete. The story of British slavery will never be complete until we understand the lives of the people forced from their native continent to an artificial society like Jamaica to work for life in unfree and brutal labor for the profit of another racial group. The story of the history of modern racism is incomplete if we don't connect the history of British colonial slavery to the history of racial subjugation through the experiences of the enslaved. Our new phase of work, which is far more ambitious than anything previously done, seeks to do just that. We want to harness the power of the digital technologies that were at the heart of the compensation database to document the lives of the enslaved people. This is a major project. It is also a difficult one. Planters were business people and as such kept detailed records of their estates. Governments did the same for their colonies in the Caribbean and in London. So the paper trail is luminous for them and less clear for the vast majority of enslaved people. But this does not mean what exists cannot, when systematically analyzed, when creatively integrated and presented, tell us a lot. We're focusing on Jamaica in this next project, which we have titled Valuable Lives, Black on Freedom and the Collapse of British Slavery in Jamaica. We will look at the existing records that mention, list, document enslaved people, and create a database of their lives. For us, there are multiple objectives to be achieved here. We can, for example, be better able to understand the genealogies of Black Jamaicans. We can see how communities evolved over time. We can better understand at a granular level resistance to slavery. We can see slavery from the cane piece looking up to the Great House rather than the other way around, which is how it has so often been recorded. But most of all, we can engage in restitutive justice. People for so long relegated by their possessors, governments, and historical records to simply numbers can become visible as persons who are connected to larger histories of forced migration to Jamaica from Africa, life in Jamaica, and through their relatives, voluntary migration later on to Britain, North America, and elsewhere. This next work will be most of all a story of Jamaican history, forcing its great import to British colonialism to be understood as such. To do this work, we'll rely on groups of citizen historians and communities in Jamaica, young people who are part of a process of historical change, must also understand the way in which the history that they carry are integral to the causes that they support. We'll be working with them and a team here at the center in London on this extraordinary work of indexing the records and being a part of building this new and important phase of this work. It is especially important for youth of today who want to know more about where they come from, but don't quite know how to do those investigations. If there's one thing that the event since 2020 in the United States and in the UK has shown us, is that the pains and the scars of the past are carried very deeply by the people of the present. And one way to understand how they were there inflicted in the first place is to go back in time and to understand that historical record much more closely and to see the lives of the ancestors more clearly. I invite you to keep in touch with us and to become part of this project as it develops. In the website link below, you'll find an email to the center, and you can email us and stay in touch with us and be part of this work. Our history is never really gone. It lives with us every day. If you're a Jamaican in Guys Hill or a Jamaican in Glasgow, we carry more than we know. And through this project, we hope to make us all more aware of just how important the responsibility of that carriage is. Thank you very much for your attention.